maybe a next time. But my name is Dan Shabilia. This is Inside Methuen, and tonight I am going to chat with former counselor, former coach, former sideline caller, video recorder guy for football games, basketball games, all the other things. You were on 436 boards.
Yeah, much.
Your time in Methuen, I mean, you did everything except school committee and run for mayor. So former counselor and Salem, Manchester, New Hampshire resident.
Yeah.
Also / Methuen sort of resident.
Still Methuen homeowner to this day, and it drives me absolutely bonkers. So, yeah. So I like to call myself disgraced former counselor for Faretra, but that's okay.
Well, hey man, when you throw around the disgrace title, they at this point I feel like they go hand in hand.
Yeah.
All right. So hold on. Let's try to take some kind of methodical approach to this particular set of madness.
Absolutely.
So you ran for council for the first time in the election cycle of 2019.
Correct.
Why? You had a good thing going.
So literally we toyed with it. My wife and I talked about it in 2017. It was kind of a joke, and we just, didn't end up doing it. I was involved with, like you mentioned, all the boards. Got really involved with the MAIC at that point, which is behind the stadium project. And then just seeing how government was working then, a bunch of us decided, to get involved. So in 2019, I was at a Chris Stapleton concert. And on our way home on the Friday was the last day to pull papers. I asked my wife, and she said, sure. We stopped at City Hall and pulled papers. Didn't think, which then forced the primary. We didn't think had any chance, really. I'm like, all right, let's do this. And then, like 6 weeks later, I came in second in the primary, and I'm like, oh, this is real now. And it just kind of snowballed from there.
Wait, it was Joyce that came in first in that primary, right?
No, it was Jimmy.
Oh, Jimmy. Oh, right.
It was Jimmy, Joyce Campagnone, myself, DJ Deeb, and then Derek Tony Jones with a 5 in that. Yeah. Oh, no, sorry. Not Tony. Sorry, Jordan Norman Diaz.
Oh,
fifth.
Right. I was a little busy that particular race doing my own.
Yes, that was your mayor's race.
Yeah, everyone makes mistakes.
Yeah.
So, all right. When you got into office, I guess before we even get there, going into office and then coming out of office 5.5-ish years later, was it the same vibe? Like, was it the same culture, mentality, or did you see a big swing over those?
No, it was, I would say, between being sworn in January 2020, serving with that same body for 4 years, and then my last 20 months, it's like apples and dump trucks. You can't compare just how sideways everything went and how quickly things were sliding back to the old Methuen over that third term. Am I disappointed in how everything ended for me? Yes. Was I disappointed to be done a few months earlier? Absolutely not. And I think, what happened those 3 months after I left kind of proves that it was never about Joel having, staying in his house in Manchester and having the Methuen house. It was get him out of the way so we can do the shady shit that we wanted to do. Let's bring back healthcare. Let's get trash for the condos. So that way, when they look to sell a house, they'll call us. Let's get private roads paved. So once again, we look good when the real estate market goes. It's gross. And I'm glad I didn't have to sit there as part of it, and that some of my counselors stood up to it, and then ultimately the mayor stepped in. But it's, those who, what is that? Those who forget history are doomed to repeat it.
We are very duplicative here in the wonderful.
Yeah. It's amazing how quickly 2017 has been forgotten. You talk about the school committee, you were on the school committee for a few years, it all started in 2017, right? It's all started with the Superiors Union and then Zani level funding the schools to pay for that, to pay for the police department. And that's where everything starts right there. And 5, 6 years later, it's just, yeah, whatever. We'll vote Ron Marsan in, who was the chair during all that, who had 2 budget meetings in 25 minutes and is caught on hot mic, approving approving Greg Gallant's promotion. No, figuring nobody's going to catch, nobody's going to watch. So, it's a little disheartening knowing how much time and effort I put in to then just watch it kind of unravel. And gonna be honest, I still have a pretty sour taste in my mouth for how things went down in September. I'm angry. There's a reason why.
You should be.
And anyone who knows me knows this is true. If I showed up to get that plaque, I would have been in prison because there's no doubt I would have punched Ron Marsan in the face. He knew what was going on with me. He knew why I needed a couple of weeks because I had 3 items I wanted to finish. I had the snow ordinance changes, which would have had the fines increased before the winter started. I was on the committee with you for the school audit. So I wanted to stay on for that September 30th meeting to be the council voice of somebody who was in those meetings. So Nellie couldn't get on her soapbox and talk about, how ridiculous it was and just talk out her ass like she does 95% of the time. And then the third one, which died because I wasn't there, was we had an ordinance. We had a revolving fund ordinance set up where 50% of the detail money would have went into a revolving fund for public safety for officers to get cardiac and all sorts of testing done biannually to help save lives. The fire department has something similar when it comes to cancers.
Yep.
If you look at the lifespan of a police officer, it's almost 20 years less than average lifespan of a human. And for them not to be able to get that testing, as part of the job, I worked with the chief on, let's figure out a way to do this without costing the taxpayers money. And let's use the money the officers made, bring in through their details to help pay for that. But since they decided to get rid of me 1 meeting early, it just went away. So, and Ron Marsan was fully aware of this. We had a conversation. I told him about my deadline. I was going to resign on October 3rd, so I get all these things at least through the first read and be done. But then he went out and hired a private investigator.
Do you know for a fact it was him? Because there's a lot of rumors about who on that council it was.
Well, he in the meeting, it took me a while before I watched it, but I did go back. He admitted in the meeting on September 15th that it was him. So,
hold on. So for those playing along at home, they hired a private investigator. That person pulled the deed from when you bought the house.
Right, which is common.
And then public record, it's out there. Anybody can pull up anybody's deed.
Yeah.
But then they showed up at the house while you and your wife were unpacking and took pictures sneakily from the other side of the street through the kitchen window.
And then I saw it. I told Heather, I'm like, they're taking pictures right now. She's like, no, they're not. And then she looked out the window and they drove away. But then the pictures was that.
For you guys staring out the window. Yeah.
So, and that is, dirty enough as it is. But then to manipulate my mother-in-law, who has early onset dementia, and we had multiple investigations going against our caregiver at the time, for them to go to the house and get her to sign a letter, which I know my wife and my brother
didn't have the capacity to do.
No, what she was signing, it was all the caregiver. And here's a little interesting tidbit. The caregiver was manipulating my mother-in-law to get power of attorney. Do you know who the attorney was who did the power of attorney?
No.
She's on the council. Jana Pesh was the attorney to help my mother-in-law's caregiver sign over power of attorney to her.
Have you reported that to the BBO?
I haven't. I wasn't sure. There's a few things I'm working on. I've done some FOIAs, which all came back with nothing, which is...
Of course, because they're not going to release anything they don't want released.
Right.
Especially now when you have a city council chair that owns the city solicitor.
Yes. And if you go back to that meeting when the solicitor was first brought on, he even said when this raise came up and we were fighting it, no, this has been in conversation since December. Well, you weren't brought on till mid-January. So Nellie and Ron, as soon as that year was over, they hatched the plan to get rid of Ken and bring in Paul. So, this is as soon as that election was over, it was a disaster, and that's what happened. So
hold on. So who paid for the PI?
So
did the taxpayers, pay for them to investigate you?
There's no public record of it because I FOIA'd every council's email for anything regarding my residency. And the only thing that came back to me was the emails that went to the council. So I'm contemplating reaching out to the AG and being like, well, if they did council business on their own personal emails and phones, if nothing was done through council email, how was this all done? Because there was an IT request, right, to find out where my iPad was being pinged. And obviously somebody sent somebody up to Manchester to take pictures of my truck in the driveway and through my window, right? And then somebody obviously went to my mother-in-law and said, hey, sign this letter. So, somebody had to have paid for that. My guess is Ron did it out of pocket or Nellie, one of those, I'll keep it somewhat clean. One of those either paid out of pocket and then to circumvent a paper trail. So, listen,
which is unfortunately very believable.
Yep. And here it is. And here's the ultimate thing. Everyone said what did I gain by staying on the council for 3 more months? It wasn't pay. I can tell you that. Like, I'm still paying a ridiculous tax bill in Methuen on my house and maintaining it. Well, and I was still in the process. Like, when I was kicked off the council, the funny thing was I could have went to the Timony the next day and voted because I was still a registered voter and a resident in the city of Methuen. Nothing was changed over yet. So I'm like, I should just walk in and do this and just, for shits and giggles and watch everybody go, well, here's my Mass license. I'm still registered in Massachusetts. My car's still registered in Massachusetts. My mail's still going there. So I had nothing to gain. I wanted to finish business that I started for the city of Methuen, and city of Methuen lost. And then you saw what happened the next 90 days. So, for those people who still, every time something comes up and they want to say, well, we had a councilor who tried to break the home rule charter. Like, I wasn't gaining anything out of that. I was trying to help the police department and help the city move forward on some items that were still open from when I was on.
Yeah, the audit was on my list of questions I wanted to talk to you about because you and I did that together. Me, you, Mary Beth, and DJ.
Yes.
And I think you and I were on the same page. Like, the process was never perfect. I mean, far from perfect.
No, and you weren't going to get a perfect product with what the scope was tied to. You know what I mean? Like, unless you were going to go high 6 figures to do it, to really, and I listened to school committee members, which is mind-boggling, say, interview everybody. Do you have any idea how the real world works when there's an audit? You don't audit everyone in the company. You don't have, we sent out questionnaires. That's how it works. You send out questionnaires, but then you interview a few random people to do that, So.
Yeah, I mean, I've been a part of a lot of audits at work by every agency and everyone else. And I mean, I would have liked to have seen them do more interviews. But again, we bought what we could afford.
Yeah.
And the way it was spun, and I'd be interested for your take, is that we planned this. We did this to make the schools look good, which I don't think the audit particularly makes the schools look good.
No, I think what happened was the audit definitely shined some light on a couple of things, but it really just proved what a lot of us thought. And that's what we wanted, right? We didn't want to hear the rumors anymore about a principal at the Marsh who was, using her position to, target staff that were not on her side and that there's bullying going on here or there. If you ask me what, the way that audit looks in the end, it doesn't put the schools in a great light, especially when it comes to the bullying piece. But you needed something to back up the claims. And I felt like that document was flawed, but it did enough to back up the claims that everyone was saying, good or bad.
Right.
So
Unfortunately, we could never do anything with it. They ran Brandy out of town,
yeah,
and now the audit is not worth the money we paid for it.
no, exactly. And you hounded me. Mind you, when the audit started, no one from that committee, no one on that council jumped up and said, I want to be involved. No one. So DJ came to me and I said, I'll do it. And I think, maybe it started, well, because the process started with Neil when I was the chair. So I think when we then wrote everything out, we made it, I'll be on it, even if it wasn't the chair, it was me. So that way, if I wasn't the chair, which kept happening in between, then we wouldn't flip it. But it's it's unfortunate because anything that you needed now to really move forward with, that the school committee, the school committee for a part of it and the council literally just cut the legs out of everything. And Brandy's like, screw you guys, I'm going home. Like, fine, I'm gonna.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't think it went down like that. I think that they beat the crap out of her.
Yeah, and I think she probably went to a doctor.
She went down swinging, though.
Yeah, and said, I need a mental health break. I need these last 6 months off. Well, you got proof here. Watch any of these meetings from the last 4 months. And any doctor's like, that's all you need? Done. You know, there's certain members on that school committee that made it a hostile environment. Same thing on the city side, on the council side. Listen, I wasn't her biggest fan at times, but
likewise.
Yeah. And
she worked her ass off for this district.
Right. And she did. And ultimately, all that does is you have just completely muddied the waters for next year, and you are going to get a third-rate candidate to try to fix the issues.
Well, I think that's what they want. You listen to Maxwell and you listen to Willette and a few others, and that's what they want, that candidate from that super Republican background, like super MAGA background, who's going to come in and stick the commandments on the wall.
Right. Well, is it them that want it, or is it their puppet master?
I mean, that's now we're getting into a lot of conjecture, and I could make guesses, but what do I know? I'm just a 2-time loser, so
yeah. It's just from watching from the outside, it's comical, and people still reach out to me all the time, and I'm like, listen, I love being up here right now. I can walk my dogs. Nobody knows who I am. I wave, I say hi, and then I go back in my house, and it's over. I follow your page. I did got my Facebook page right afterwards of all the Methuen people that I really
made the cut.
You didn't make the cut originally. I brought you back, I believe.
Oh, that's hurtful.
Listen, but until the people in Methuen wake up and stop listening to the assholes that think they're the voices, your Duggins and your Sid Harrises and, who think they know everything, like Methuen's it's going to be in a cycle. The cycle is just going to be like shit going down the drain of a toilet. It's just going to keep going around and around. Ultimately it's just going to fill back up with the same stuff.
I was doom scrolling earlier and I saw a video and this woman was explaining that these people on Facebook that do the biggest and the loudest spouting, they're not giving the facts. They're using these words that are unquantifiable. And that's what you're getting out of that group. You're getting non-quantifiable, feel-good words that people are buying into because they're either the dog whistle or they're just, it's that sense of belonging. And that's the garbage. And that's what people are buying into.
Oh, absolutely. It's an absolute it's social media's blessing and a curse, but more of a curse than a blessing, right? Hey, I get to connect with people I went to high school with and, kind of reunite with some people is great. But then the rest of it is just absolute garbage. And when people depend on it for their real news, especially locally, you're fucked. Like,
yeah.
Listen, because I have my, I'm not the most popular guy, and I wasn't, and that wasn't my goal. I was never like that. And that wasn't my goal. I was never a politician, right? Like that is, and that's my, if someone's called me a politician, I hated that. Like, so, and I didn't want to turn into that. And then what sucked is I had to, like, you couldn't go back at, you couldn't go after everybody on Facebook. You were told, the solicitor, and they went, no, you can't do that. Make sure you're not doing that. You don't, but everyone's got, balls of courage when you're behind a keyboard, but when you're out in real life, it doesn't. Steve Gillis is one of them, where he talked all this crap about me, but when he saw me in the bang, he put his face in his hands and hit. Once he sees me in person, he's not going to say anything.
No.
Harris is the same way. He comes to see, oh, I don't know why we're not friends anymore. Dude,
you're a keyboard warrior,
right? You're a fraud whose family sucks off the tea to the city, and you pretend you're this outsider. And if you have to tell somebody every other sentence that you've done advocacy work for 40 years, have you really done it? Because everyone would know. You don't have to remind everybody of it.
All right, let's go back a little bit because we went. So you came on this council 2020,
yes.
and that was the tail end of the Solomon, because McNamara was in at that point. And right, McNamara was here at that point.
No,
that was the tail end of Solomon. We haven't done the search yet.
Right. So my first act as a city councilor was an executive session in Rick DiAgostino's office, bringing all us newbies up to speed on everything. And I remember looking at Allie Saffy across the table, and just like, holy crap, right? Like you had heard rumblings, and you start hearing all this stuff, and it just continued to snowball. You had the IG report.
Yep.
After the IG, what was the most amazing part to me about all of that eventually is the amount of people that are high up in the Commonwealth that just completely ignored it and did not want to do anything about it. I think that was the biggest red flag, the biggest thing that's like, holy crap, why isn't Methuen getting any help? And you just realize it's just incestuous. They all know each other, and no one's going to ever do anything to harm them.
Yeah.
So this was 2020. We start there. Then also 10 weeks later, COVID hits. Well, I'm in City Hall for my first meeting for the Athletic and Recreational Enhancement Committee, and the NBA shuts down that night because somebody tests positive on the Wednesday. Schools shut down, and then everything snowballed after that. So you go from, not having an idea really what you're doing. I didn't own a suit, as anyone will tell you, as many people.
Dude, I loved it when you would walk into the city council dressed like a regular person.
Yeah. And
because
I did too. And I was. And people gave me crap, and I'm like, whatever. I didn't bother me, but
you know what? When all of those contracts were signed, and Solomon got his sweetheart deal, and D'Agostino got his parachute, and the guy who was the fiscal guy before him.
Oh, Joe Kelly?
Yeah, Kelly. You know who was sitting around that table?
Everybody in suits.
Everybody in a suit.
Right.
So tell me how the suit matters at the table.
It doesn't. But it's an easy target, right? Like, oh, look, he's sitting next to, Steve Sabu's got a suit on. Jimmy McKinney's got a suit on. Nick kind of has a suit on because he can't button his top button and put his tie on.
Nick alone.
I like the most part. He's the only one who defended me on that council. So I'm forever grateful for that. But him and I tease each other all the time.
Listen, I'll give Nick a hard time with the best of them because I enjoy it.
Yeah.
And he can take it. He'll give it right back. So it's okay.
Yeah. So, I don't want to get too far off of that, but yeah. So I come on, and that was one of the reasons, you see everything that's going on. So I run because of the police department stuff and just other, obviously the Zani stuff. I got a lot of flack for wanting to remove his name from the clubhouse because that was done under shady circumstances. So, and then, you're learning how to do this, and then next thing you know, you're behind a screen like this, try to run city council meetings when nobody really knows what's going on.
Yeah.
So
So the whole pulling Zani's name off the building really was a catalyst for you, because during your last election cycle, that was when the Zani sequel came after you, and you guys were pulling
yeah,
FOIAs for each other's.
yeah. So she pulled FOIAs for permits at my house, which is fun. It's a great contradiction. First of all, I live in my mother-in-law's basement, but you're not pulling permits. Well, which is it, guys? Right? Like, so, and what? I didn't pull a permit, to replace a couple windows. Somehow when I had electricity put in for a pool in like 2002, and all I did is use the same power for my hot tub, somehow I didn't pull a permit for that. Like, there was no work needed to be done. The power was already there, and everything else was done by vendors. But it's just ridiculous. So I'm like, all right, I can play this game. Let me pull any permits for all her rental properties. But ultimately, they lied. Sean Fountain and Zani and everyone, and they all covered for Zani to get that clubhouse named after him. He was dying. This was be a final wish, So ultimately, Steve's like, Joel, just give it up, fine. And that day before we're on the field for like the day before Thanksgiving, we're doing the naming, and the next day he's on a plane to Vegas with Solomon and Alemo going to play poker. And they're giving him a fake award to make him feel good. They totally played him like that. And, ultimately when all these reports come out, we were right. Like, he was either, not of, full mind at that point, or he was incompetent, one of the two. So, say what you want about Jana coming after me and me going after her. So it was never about her. Nothing's personal. The reason I ran is because of all the crap that was going on in the city. And ultimately, he was the one at the head when all of this happened, right? Like, he was handed when he came in as mayor, the city was in a good financial spot. Everything was well. And when he left, we're in receivership because we owe $4 million. So,
Dude, to this day, I maintain the fact, and I remember sitting in that chamber when Jajuga and Judy Scannell were screaming at each other, almost nose to nose in front of the podium.
yeah,
If it wasn't for the police, the school overspend, that $4 million overspend, I don't think they would have caught the jump in the police department budget.
no, it's because it was flat. It was flat funded from one year to another. And if you get your regular increase in your school budget, that $4 million is maybe $1 million, right? Like, if it goes from 78 to 81, 82 instead of 78 to 78, that money gets eaten up and just shuffled from one line item to another. And you maybe get a couple 100,000 you're looking for at the end of the year, not
Right.
But, one of the things I learned was Solomon was brilliant when it came to the books, so he knew that when he came in front of that council, starting with McCarty and Saba, Eunice and Jess, excuse me, that things were going to get cut. They're going to come after his budget. But he built in so much fat in that budget that, yeah, all right, they're going to cut a couple of things, but I still have so much money that I don't need that it's not going to make a difference. Because then you saw it when Scott came in, where, the budget completely drastically dropped because of all the items that were really not necessary. You have like just, ridiculous amounts of money and stupid stuff. So,
Yeah. So for budgeting, what was your takeaway over the 6 budgets that you did? Like, what did you see evolve? What did you learn? I mean, you had 2 drastically different groups doing it.
so here was the frustrating part, especially with the last group I had. I think anyone who watched those meetings knows I was head of the line when it came to offering cuts and proposing cuts and trying to do stuff wherever. There were so many counselors that would fight cuts, and not just fight cuts, but then talk about needing positions added. Jess was famous for this. Right? Anytime he tried to make a cut, you can't make a cut here. We got to save DPW. You got to do this. I want to cut $5,000 out of this line to get pens. Right? So she doesn't vote really for any big cuts. She talks about adding positions, but then when we went to the budget, she would vote no on the whole budget. So that way in November, when you're voting on the tax rate, she could sit back and say, well, I didn't vote. I voted no. I didn't vote for this budget. But everything you did in May and June contradicts what your vote really was. And Nellie and Patricia, I think were great for that come in this last cycle where, they're going to die on the Searles Hill, but everything else they did wanted to add millions upon millions to the budget, and then come back and in June they vote yes on it. And if they had their way, there would have been another $8 million in there. But when it comes time to figure out who's going to put that bill, now they're like, oh my God, the tax rate. Like, well, everything you do, the meeting in November is really meaningless. It's what you do in May and June.
Yep.
That set up that meeting in November.
1,000%. My biggest issue.
Yeah.
And I'm feeling, if you remember, one of the things that we did during budget cycle is they did a lot of level funding, but level funding for things that were beyond our control. Things like utilities. We level funded utilities.
Yeah.
There's no chance you're going to have the same gas bill you had last year.
No.
The rates have gone up. We artificially created a budget planning to use free cash. And now, yes, we did dip free cash for the schools because Methuen hasn't cared about education in 40 years. But I mean, you tell me if I'm wrong, man, but I feel like that budget was built on a house of cards.
And it's going, well, let's look at health insurance, for example, right? In the last budget I was at, we had to go back to the council and ask for about $2 million in free cash because of pretty much GLP-1s, right? Because Methuen's self-insured, we went over that budgeted number because of prescriptions, and mainly that was the main culprit, right? So really, I'm sure when you looked at the number that was in that budget for fiscal year 26, right? The current fiscal year, it wasn't close to what we spent in fiscal year 25, because you have to take that 14.8, if I'm correct, plus add the close to 2 million we had to pull out of free cash to pay the bills. So really, you should be working off the 16.8 number, not whatever that other line item was to start the fiscal year. What was the line to end the fiscal year? And then
that's not how we plan.
No, exactly.
The budget is fake.
But what I want, a lot of municipalities kind of do the same thing.
Doesn't make it right.
No, it doesn't make it right. And here's the great thing about it. Right? So you have a mayor, you have a governor, and you have your legislature all just pointing fingers at each other saying it's all your fault. Are we ever going to fix it? No. Nope. But what I'll do is I'll tell you, the governor's going to go, hey, you know what I'll let you do? Won't you you can raise the excise tax. And won't you just, bump, get a little bit more from your citizens that way? We're not going to look at doing anything on Beacon Hills to actually cut spending and help out municipalities, because government, government aid is pretty much flatline. Chapter 70 is broken after the 2-year bump, because when you had that fiscal year 23, 24 dramatic increases in Chapter 70 funding, but then all of a sudden it flatlines. You had all these.
We've been at 1 or 2%.
Right. You look at what
real. It's right. Not marked to inflation.
I saw the the governor's number for 27. I'm like, you're going to be back at, those school committee and city council are going to be back at each other's throat in about 4 months, and you're going to be calling in your state reps and your state senators to ask for help. And what was the most aggravating about last year is you remember this. We're about to have the council meeting, and DJ gets a call, right? When we end up having to cancel, right? We end up adjourning the meeting because he gets.
They passed a bill that night, and we got that. What was it? $4 million. Yeah.
But the state legislature and the governor's office are the ones who set the budget, don't really fund the town, city and towns enough, and then ride in their white horse after and like, look, we're the heroes. We just gave you more money. So, that was the most aggravating piece of it all was this, the state really doesn't let the money trickle down to the cities and towns like it should. And then all of a sudden they come in and they're the heroes for getting us the money that is due.
Yeah, it's going to be bad. The fact that Chapter 770's come back, I think it's like 2.3%. I know I did an article about it a couple of weeks ago when the governor's budget came out. Everyone's getting a 3% raise. Busing is going to go up. I think it was 6 or 7%. I don't even know what they're giving the special ed schools because the rates are set for those by the state.
Yeah.
Like it's going to be worse than last year because the whole city's getting 3.
Yeah. And this is where I was frustrated as a counselor, especially the last 2 years, because at least from 20 to 24, right? From, the 19 to 23 group, you knew that everyone at that table was doing their homework. We may be pulling in different directions, but it's not from a lack of apathy. It's from, we're just looking at things differently, but at least everyone at that table did their homework. To where those last 2 years,
it felt very scripted watching some of the meetings.
Well, listen, Joyce and I have had our differences and we've settled a lot of them. But when you have the vice chair hand feeding her medication during the meeting, right, like literally like a bird putting pills in her mouth, it doesn't send the message that, this is, that she's not being controlled and manipulated. And that's not what anyone wanted for Joyce. She did a lot for this city.
Yeah.
Everyone will complain about her bouncing back and forth and doing that, but those are the rules. And if you don't like the rules, change the rules. And I wish she had just stayed away and didn't do that last term because I think that's the memory that people have of everything. And it's just sad because people who are friends, supposedly are friends like Ron Marsan and Nellie, preyed on that and took advantage of that. And if they needed a vote, they knew they could get her to vote that way. And and when all this happened with me, when Joyce was missing for 6 months and missed the whole budget cycle, crickets. You know what I mean? Like, so this is
right.
what, this is why I know it was personal. It was now, I made enemies. And to me, that means I did my job.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I've got my fair share and I think we share a few. So go us.
I'm sure as this gets out, there'll be all the posts tomorrow threatening lawsuits for mentioning people's names. Well,
neither one of us is an elected official anymore.
No,
it's not defamation if it's true.
Right. I'm sure, like our buddy Bob LeBlanc, when you posted this event where
I love when the accused and charged pedophile comes out of the woodwork.
Yeah, exactly. Like, for him to try to, it's just, if I'm the city of Methuen, like we don't want any claim to you. Like, you should just stay under a rock in your house. You can watch social media, but you should not comment. You're in no place to comment. These rumors have been around for 30, 40 years.
Yeah.
And they're not really rumors. It's just that, when you're high up in that party, you get protected. For all the,
let's be fair. It's when you're high up in any party, you get protected. Right.
Well, especially, if your party runs the state, you're much more likely to get protected. If you're a Democrat here, as compared, and if you're a Republican in other states, Democrats do what they want here. Like, look at the audit. Diana had, you saw that today, her going to court now to get something. Right. And
took her long enough. Come on, right. Diana. Should have been there 6 months ago.
Yeah. Before I went the road I did where everything kind of fell apart at home with what was going on with my wife's family, that's the one thing that I do really like to keep off limits. I don't need to air that dirty laundry, why we ended up moving and all that, buying a house out of state. When we were
all your empty nesters, like,
yeah. Well, I had conversations with people about, do I buy a house, stay in Methuen, move to the West End and run against Ryan Hamilton? Because I was just so frustrated with what was going on at the state level. Like, how can you not even get like the representatives of the town that she is from to at least come out and say, no, we're for it. For them to kind of just poo-poo it and be like, "Oh no, I don't even know. We're not sure if it's legal. What's that? Come on, guys. What good is a ballot question on when you guys go in November to the ballot and there's questions on there about lowering the income tax from 5% to 4%. What makes you think the legislature in the Commonwealth is going to say, yeah, sure, we'll take in less money? They're going to do the same thing. They're gonna find a way not to enforce that.
Or they're
That,
going to jack up the other rates and
yeah,
offset it.
like Massachusetts doesn't have a money stream problem. It's got a spending problem. You bring in all your billions in cannabis money. Now you got legalized gambling. You've got everything else coming. You got a millionaire's tax, and you still got businesses leaving left and right. And you're just going to have budget shortfall after budget shortfall, and nothing's going to change. Locally, statewide, it just doesn't seem like anything's going to change. I moved up here to New Hampshire, and to me, it's great, but I'm not getting involved. And people ask me that. You're going to get involved in politics in New Hampshire? Like, when have you ever heard somebody get kicked in the balls and then say, "No, please kick me again"? Absolutely not. I've done
No,
my
you're not. You're not opting for a round two.
no. I'll never run for office again. I'll never do anything like that because I learned my lesson. And you wrote an article a few months ago that really resonated with me was when you talked about candidates, right? Like why you want to do this. And Allie and I are perfect examples of that. We didn't come from politics. Just, she got involved because everything was happening in her neighborhood with the sweetheart him.
I remember.
So, we were just, two literally people that lived in Methuen. And to me, I envisioned spend the rest of my life there to try to help out the city. And what thanks do you get? I've met some great people, become friends with a lot of people, but it's also put a sour taste in my mouth when it came to, the old boy network and how things really won't change on a local level, even if you do you do change things, because I felt like that council that I was on that 4 years, we did a lot of great things, but there's still some things that didn't get done. And there's always ties to somebody, to elected officials that somehow things won't change for certain things. And, you were enemies with Mr. McCarty, my central district,
I was never enemies with Jimmy. I liked a lot of what Jimmy did.
yeah.
I also didn't like a lot of what Jimmy did. Same thing with Allie. I think Allie did some great stuff. And then there were some things I was like, what is she doing? But they're going to say the same thing about me. It is what it is. And
that's fine. And that's how politics shouldn't be all 9 people agreeing on stuff. And if you do it, something's going wrong. But there's no more there's no more just civil discourse between people anymore, right? Like, and what aggravates me, go back to your social media thing, is everybody is so focused on Washington and what's going on there. You're looking out the front window, but you don't see what's going on in your backyard. And what's going on in your backyard is 10 times more going to affect you than what's going on out there. And and you have people in places of power locally that know that and profit off of it.
Yep.
And
and then they mimic it.
Then when you get 65, 70% of the country coming out in 2024 for a presidential election, and then you get 8% coming out for your local election, then you want to complain. Why isn't my road paved? Why isn't this done? Why isn't that?
Because it's an unaccepted way.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's another. Listen, that was Eunice and myself. It might have been Jim. It might have been Jimmy. No, it was Allie. Started that committee just to try to figure out how do we go about getting these situations, remedied, whether it's making sure it's disclosed at sale, which it isn't, or, bring it, but then it's completely snowball. Nellie came on when Eunice left and just completely took over that thing. And so when I decided I didn't want to be chair of that committee for the next year, they tried to name, what's the gentleman's name from who lives on the street in the West? Michael Welch.
Welch. Yeah.
They went to the solicitor to ask if he could be the chair of the council committee, and he's not an elected official.
No, they made him a special consultant. He gets paid to do it.
Right, exactly.
And his street made it to the top of the list of streets that they want to use their money to pave private property. When there's a process for all of this. There's a way to go about getting these roads accepted, and we did all the research. It's
Yeah.
all published.
The blueprint was there, like, and that was the thing. And then it was us working with, at that time, it was Ken, how do we go about, this? And, he was skeptical, which I'm sure lawyers were, about just accepting roads as is. And then it becoming on the city's dime to repair them, instead of, having the people who own the street bring it up to somewhat, bring it up a little bit and then you accept it. But that's just one of many things that just went absolutely sideways.
So when I was campaigning this last election, I did a lot of doors. One of the things I heard when I was knock on doors and they were city official or city employees was that this current council, your council, was creating a tough atmosphere in City Hall.
Absolutely.
What was that all about?
So there were certain councilors who, and it wasn't just this group. A lot of councilors just felt like they walked around City Hall like they owned it. They would pop into department heads' office, unannounced, ask questions. I was never like that because I had a real job. So maybe actually, not, when I was the chair, I'd have to leave work early to get there to do every other week or whatever. But you also had councilors on this last cycle who would go in there and, bully department heads, to make sure things that went their way, and would tell department heads, "Oh, that's not how you do it." Like, well, they've been in that role for 20 years. Like, they've been in this department for 20 plus years, and I'm pretty sure they know how it works. So you can't just go in there and tell them, "No, don't do it that way." There's definitely a sense of entitlement amongst some of those counselors, because then they look at it as, all right, well, if you're not going to do that, wait till it comes to the floor for certain things. You saw Patricia Valley do it when it came to a DPW position, where she said a friend didn't get a call back on a certain position. And then what you do? She votes no. And then the next 3 meetings, they request the councilors of all this DPW stuff. So, how many other positions did you vote on before that you didn't have a hand in, you didn't have a dog in the race, that you just voted yes for, but now all of a sudden, somebody who sent in a resume for this and they didn't get a call back. And now all of a sudden you're looking at everything over a fine tooth comb. I got into it with former Mayor Perry about the Mark Jordan hire, and I ended up being 100% wrong on that, because he's really proven himself. My issue was with the process, that we didn't call anyone back from the outside that was qualified. We only took internal candidates. But you got to make this legit. Like, you can't just say, we're closing out every exterior candidate, only interviewing interior ones. And that was my issue. And I said that flat out. Like, if you guys interview people from the outside, he's still the best person, then I'll vote for him.
So be it.
Right. But you can't continue to slant processes to make your friends, get that job. And that's what happened a lot. And, with, I'm sure, listen, I grew up in Everett, and then I served time and spent time in Methuen. I'm like, am I the common denominator between, corruption?
If Manchester starts to go to hell in a handbasket.
Don't worry. In 7 years, I'm hoping to be in South Carolina. But so I've kind of snowballed a little bit here and just kind of went off. Did you have other legit questions?
Oh yeah, dude. I had a whole list of them, but I mean, we've covered a lot of them just in tangent.
Yeah.
So I guess I was going to ask if you'd ever do it again, but we got that answer. Like, you told me when I asked you about this, when we were talking about it, nothing could be off limit. Right. What were you thinking about when you asked me that, when you gave me that condition?
Just that, I'm going to talk about how everything went down when that whole thing went down in September with me getting voted off the council. How everything else went. I'm not going to hold it back anything. That was my thing.
All right. That's
that. Like, well, I don't want to get into it. I'm not going to bring up names. No, like, Nellie and Ron put their names out there when it came to me, and then Jana as well. So, if you don't want that heat, then don't bring that up in that meeting in September. To me, Jana's a fraud, right? Like, she went up there and talked about how her votes, if I was to vote on anything else, that I might be it might not be legal, yet push forward an ordinance to give herself health insurance in the lame duck period. And that's why Paul O'Neill's a joke, right?
Oh yeah, no, Paul.
Any solicitor worth their weight would say, you cannot vote on this. This needs to go to the next council. And then for them to call it, the joke was
an emergency session,
that
New Year's Eve,
right.
day before. It was a joke. Absolute.
Yeah.
It made a mockery of the city council.
To me, if you're a
And
citizen,
then they lost.
what?
And then they lost the vote. Why call an emergency vote if you haven't whipped your votes?
And listen, and I know you and I have talked about this, but I hope if there's actually anyone who's watching this was all done after the election, right? Like there wasn't an ordinance brought up in September to give themselves health insurance or October to give themselves health insurance or to get these roads accepted. This was done strategically after your ballots were cast so they could have 2 more years. And then I'm going to get myself this little perk, which I wrote the ordinance to get rid of it because you're not a permanent part-time employee. You don't work. I know there's councilors that work a bunch. I also know there's councilors who do nothing.
Yep.
So
we all see it watching meetings. You can see it.
Absolutely. And permanent I know everyone's upset about part-time. Listen, that's the Commonwealth. Go to the Commonwealth, go to your state rep and tell them to get the law changed. That's why permanent part-time and full-time employees are eligible for benefits under the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. An elected official like a city councilor or a school committee member aren't even close to that.
No.
So, and were there times I put in 20 hours a week? Maybe, but I did a lot, and I still have trouble coming up with 20 hours a week of council work that I did. It doesn't happen. I would sit there with a Bloody Mary on a Sunday morning with my packet and make notes and do all that. And maybe that took a couple hours. And then you get your meeting. So what's that? 6 hours, 7? I'm not spending another 13 hours in the week.
When you think about it, the health insurance prices skyrocketed this year.
Yeah. And
everybody who wanted it was self-employed. They all voted.
Yes.
In the last presidential election, knowing that health insurance was going to go up and they were trying to cover themselves. I don't know how you are you really it's 2 things, right? You're either oblivious to the real world and think nobody's going to notice what you're doing, how it's self-serving, or you just telling the city of Methuen, I don't give a fuck. I'm getting what's mine. It's the ladder. Right. And then, for them to kind of cut off public participation at the next meeting, knowing they were going to get hammered again. And this is the one thing, when we talked about Nick earlier, the thing I was very disappointed in him was that he amended it to add the school committee to the city council. Like you're going over there, dude. You can say you're not going to take it, but you don't know what's going to happen in 6 months. Your wife, all of a sudden your wife, loses a job. She goes out. When Chapter 70 bottoms out and they have to cut teachers. Right. Now you're like, all right, I'll take it. Right. And you're not supposed to be a burden on the taxpayer. Like you're supposed to serve the taxpayers, not, line your pockets with it. And that was, when you looked at it, you had Jana, who has a law firm. You have Patricia Valley, who's a realtor. You have Nellie Soto, who's a realtor. And then you have Ron, who owns his own business. And Ron voted no, though. So he did. Ron's credit, he did vote no. So I'll give him. He maintained it. Right. So gotta at least give him a little bit of credit on that. I'll give credit where credit is due. He bankrupted the city, but he did it, and it was a baby step in the right direction. Correct. So, but also, man, I mean, between me, you, and 26 people watching right now, the thing that I thought was funny and that we joked about is poor Ron looked like a beaten puppy. Like he was petrified of Soto the entire time he was chair. Absolutely. So what was the dynamic there? So Nellie plays the game well, right? Clearly, yes. So, there was obviously the plan when I was the chair and people asked if I'd be the chair again. And I told them, I'm not going to run. I'm not going to petition people, but if you want me to be the chair for the last year, I'll do it. But I'm not going around asking people for votes. So Ron went around
got the votes, and tied Nellie into it. And one of the first acts with it when Ron becoming the chair was, and Nellie sent something out about, making sure she's included on all communications to the chair. So she took control from day one. You saw it. It was pretty obvious. And if you give Ron truth serum, he wanted no part of that special meeting. And
I wouldn't doubt it.
no, he didn't want that. You're like, do you think he's not going to call a meeting for the last business day of the year for something that he knew didn't have the votes, right? So
Well, I think they were banking on Joyce swinging, and Joyce didn't.
no, and Joyce, unfortunately, it was who gets to Joyce last, right? Is it Ron and Ann picking up Joyce and bringing it to the meeting and saying, do you really want this to be your last vote? So I see the question in the chat. Why the fear? My guess is that pretty much if you go against Nellie and you're a white male, you're a racist. She is very quick to play that card. So, Ron's, for the most part, just laid back and kind of, you see the way he runs meetings. You can't hear him. He's very, the most he ever talked was the meeting to get rid of me.
Bring out the best in people, Joe.
I do. So I think Ron's just like, no, I'm going to go along with it, do whatever. And I think he just got frustrated with a lot of the stuff that goes on. And I didn't do a very good job of hiding my frustration at the table when it came to certain stuff.
It's hard, man. As someone who had to sit at a table that had the propensity to be very frustrated, it is extremely difficult, and I will acknowledge that, to sometimes just keep your face from showing how stupid the situation is that you're currently sitting through.
Oh, yeah. There were times I'd openly laugh, and, you never know which camera is on you.
Yeah.
You never know what's going to be seen. But, if you're going to say something stupid, you're going to have to own it. And if you don't want people to react like that, then be smart and do your homework, and, don't come there and think everyone else in the table is stupider than you. And I feel like that was a lot of, the current,
so much ego.
Right. The current chair now, decided I'm going to come out with my own podcast on TikTok and come up with cute little nicknames for the council. Like,
hi, I'm Belly Button.
Right. Like, come on, like, give the people some, the voters deserve some respect. And when you talk down to everyone in the room and pretend that they're idiots and you're the smartest one there, really, they don't respect you. So I think ultimately that's, but the way it is in Methuen and probably a lot of other places, doesn't matter who, really what happens with the people, because it's whoever's pulling the strings behind, Why do you have Ron Marsan, a lifetime Methuen resident, endorsing Brian DePena and showing up at his events? Like, you want to talk, like, what's the tie there? And that tie wasn't there until Nellie got involved, right? Like, so, connect the dots. And when she said put the schools in receivership, I'm like, that reflects bad on you, right?
But also, we don't meet any of the receivership qualifications. Not a single one, not even close.
No, but
it was a buzzword. It was a trigger word for her to get attention. That's what it was.
It did. I don't think it's good attention. Like, it makes you look like an idiot. Like, there's never an elected official who really is looking, hey, do me a favor, take over the schools for us. Like, when before I came on, when you had to do the $4 million loan, like, no one wants that. You don't want to have somebody, you're now at a little kid table at Thanksgiving waiting for mom and dad to give you, your food. And that's pretty much what it was, under Sean Cronin, and then having to bring in Maggie and everything. So for you to just sit there and just pretty much tell the people when you're idiots, you don't know what you're talking about, listen to me.
Well, that there are comments already being sent around that we're the problem, that it's me and you because we're talking about this and we're mean and we're hateful and every name they want to be calling us right now.
Yep.
Because we're not just praising them.
And listen, look, I don't like, I get nauseous whenever I'm in Methuen working on the house there, or I have to drive through. And I went through a crap ton in those 5 years, right? Like, the one year I'm in the chair, right, we have Neil getting sick, then he passes, right? And I'm thinking, so I'm literally in Boston with my wife, and I'm getting the phone calls, and I'm having to call the counselor, letting them know that Neil passed, and dealing with all that. And then I decide, guys, I'll take the heat, right? So I'm like, I'll go down to City Hall on Sunday morning and meet with the press, so that way you guys all start getting phone calls. Like, who would have thought that that's a bad thing? Like, you know what I mean? Like, but people thought that me doing that was me just trying to, be out in front and get the publicity. I'm like, I don't want the publicity. My friend died yesterday.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm trying to make this as smooth as possible and just have one person answer all the questions and do that, so no one else's phones are ringing off the hook. I'm like literally down there in a hooded sweatshirt and shorts that don't match. And I pull in the back of City Hall, and 10 reporters come flocking out of their cars, you know, but people looked at it as an opportunity for them to grandstand. And that's it. And you realize after that, like, what are we doing here? And
So Bill asked a question in the chat. I don't know who Bill is. Somebody named Bill said, "Who is them?" And I don't remember which of them we were talking about when we said them and he asked. So
no,
Bill, if you want to throw a follow up out there, I'll answer you. I'll tell you who them is.
yeah. So, but it is what it is. And ultimately, what I wanted to, what I wanted anyone who's watching this or it gets shared, like, really just pay attention. Like, don't pay attention to the social media stuff. Watch those meetings every once in a while and really look at who's got your best interest, because it's pretty obvious right now when you're sitting at that table. Like, you look there and you're like, no one does. Like, very few people do. And, you have some new counselors there that are going to get their feet wet. I admire, I got texts from that first night about Ella McLaren kind of standing up to people because she wasn't voting for people because they didn't contact her. And now she's
Yeah, that was a good look for her.
right. And, and then of course she's getting slammed by, by a non-Methuen resident, of course, so, and I don't know if that was going to come up or not, but the whole Duggan thing, but like,
No, we don't use his name because that gives him power.
right.
The little syphilitic chihuahua, as I've now labeled him.
Yeah. And what,
He's Yippee in the background.
yeah. And he basically creates fear amongst followers, right? So if you don't cut in, and listen, I'm prime example. When I ran for, I probably don't get elected if it wasn't for his podcast, right? It gave me an opportunity to be seen against the other candidates and let me show that. And I heard a lot of positive feedback from how I did on those 2 debates. And then he asked me to write the column. I'm like, I love food. I'll do this. But then after 5 or 6 columns or whatever, I'm like, I don't like the writing. And I told him, I'm like, listen, I just don't enjoy this. And of course you don't get paid, right?
Right.
No one gets paid to write for him. And then he's like, well, what if I'm like, Tom, I just don't want to do it. And then all of a sudden he hated me because the most popular column in his paper went away. So, everyone's like, how many beards is that? And I still get that from people, when I was rating food by beards. And that's why I'm on that shit list. You're on it for different reasons.
Oh, a different reason every day.
Right. Neil ended up on that list. DJ ends up on that list. But Kristen Maxwell and Nellie.
Because she's controllable.
Right. The best was Duggan saying how you're reporting on Wanda, you're going to Santos' personal life, and that's not what journalists do. I'm sorry. I remember
literally the business he's built.
Right. Well, I remember him posting everything about me in September. I'm like, I'm pretty sure me buying a house in Manchester is probably less important than running into a snowbank in a mailbox in the middle of the night, so, which is more newsworthy, really. And, that for that not to come up at the last meeting, from what I was told, like, she didn't make it, how do you not make a statement to the public, or anything? Like,
I'm assuming she was told not to.
Right. But you still go, hey, I apologize.
Just bad judgment.
Yeah.
Learning, yada, yada.
Yeah. You can just, put it to Chat GPT. give me an apologetic speech for driving into a snowbank while drunk, and I'm sure 100 of them will pop up. But
Yeah, man. I mean, I don't follow him. I don't check his page unless someone sends me a screenshot of it. I don't see it because, quite frankly, I don't care.
no, and I'm in the same boat right now. Like I had to tell a good friend of mine, stop, like especially when all this was going down. I'm like, and then afterwards, like, stop sharing it. I don't care. I'm like, it's over. I'm like, you know, and I tell people like, you guys are the
Well,
ones
we're
that.
going to be on the cover next month. I'm going
Oh,
to go to Heavenly for my morning coffee, and it's going to be our two mugs on the front cover of his paper.
hey, I look pretty good now. So
Well,
with that,
you got those GLP-1s from the city, right?
yeah, I do, actually, yes, I actually do. Just to be honest with you, my wife, we get the health insurance from my wife, not me, but we get it from her. And she's been a teacher though for 23 years there. So
Yeah, man. And she's a special ed teacher too. She's doing the grunt work there. She's working her tail off. No, I mean, not to say that the rest of the teachers aren't, but
and listen, as soon as I was off the council, she started catching stuff too. And as soon as you're not connected anymore and not in the council, not in a position of power, all of a sudden people aren't afraid to do stuff. So she had some rough times there with some supervisors as soon as I was off the council. And I told her, I'm like, bring that to your union rep. She's like, but I don't think that's the reason. I'm like, it doesn't matter. I'm like, it's the optics of it.
Yep.
That your husband gets voted off the council, and then 3 weeks later, you're getting you're getting flack for this and getting a bad review. And no, like, it's, it was just, it was undesirable. You know, she didn't want to, she contemplated looking for another job and leaving Methuen. It was that bad. And it sucks. Like you said, she's been there, she started there 2004. I think 2000. Yeah, she graduated 2003 from Simmons with her master's and started the next school year there. So
I was in high school.
I know. Listen, whenever I was having these conversations with DJ and Allie, and I'm like, you might not have been like, when I'm like, yeah, I got married in '98, and they're like, yeah, I was in like third grade. I'm like, I'm like, you guys are closer to my kids' age than my age, and those are DJ and Allie are still, we have a group text, the three of us, and we still chat all the time. So I'm grateful for that. There's still a couple of people, employed in Methuen that I still talk to, which is good, but for the most part, as soon as I was gone, I'm dead to them. Like, I'm fighting with the city now over trees that are hitting my house that my insurance company wants to cancel my insurance. And it's been 4 months to get the trees trimmed back. And, they keep saying, oh, it's not us, like, no, they're your trees, they buckled the sidewalk and,
File a small claims action against the city.
oh, and yeah, so I actually talked to a tree company. I've talked to two. None of them wanted to touch it because it's a city tree. But I think I know somebody that might do it now. And then I would just
Dude, I got a pole saw. File a small claims action against the city for $7,000 because that's the limit. When the city gives you the money, pay Chuck with the truck to come by and hack them down.
Oh, yeah. It's just,
if the city's not going to do its job and they're going to find ways to circumvent, you have to be able to play their game.
yeah, dude, C-Click Fix is the biggest fraud. Like, you feel bad. You tell people you C-Click Fix. It's a black hole. Things go in, nothing comes out. And if people that don't believe it, go into C-Click Fix one day if you have the app and scroll through all the requests throughout the city. Look at the age of them. Nothing gets closed out. Nobody really replies.
And what are paying for that app every month?
Right. And that's why when I would tell, someone would call me, oh, the easiest way is C-Click Fix. Like, oh, I've already tried that. Nobody answered me. Like, of course. You know what I mean? Like, so that's
Call your city councilor.
Yeah. I've actually contemplated calling Ella. I'm not going to call Sam. Well, I had some snowbanks in front of my street was like,
they're protecting the house. Okay.
Well, the snow was like 5. I'm like, well, at least Santos could drive into it and push it back a little bit for me.
Hey, I did see your post about how your street's getting more narrow by the day. So
yeah, they actually, they went by there today and brought it down before it snows some more tonight. And I think that's like, as we get closer to wrapping this up, that's the part that I was disappointed in the most. Is I'm proud of the stuff I did. Did I make mistakes? Absolutely. But the lasting memory now is going to be how it ended for me.
Yep.
And
it sucks.
And it does, because I had conversations with Ron in early September that I want to finish the 2 ordinances in the meeting. October 3rd is my last day. Okay, but yeah, sounds good to me. But I'm getting questions from the council. It's not me. It's not me. That's his famous things. I just want to move on. And then, he's pulling all this other stuff for the FOIA request to IT to pull all that stuff. So, little smiley. And, anytime something comes up now with a counselor, I'm associated with it. Well, we had a counselor who didn't live in the city.
Well, right. Now you're the scapegoat for everything that's ever going to go wrong.
Right. Where if you look at, in the grand scheme of things, my name comes up more than the guy who had a book written about him and just got out of serving jail time for some reason. Which,
yeah, man, the fact that Sean Fountain got to impersonate a cop, kidnap people, be a part of forgery and fraud and all the other things, and then got a I mean, we won't go down that road because I did that last week. But
right.
Wild.
You read Larry's book, and the stuff they did was just brazen. And because you had never, Joe was untouchable. It's one thing to bring a friend on as a part-time intermittent and, break the rules that way, but then to promote him as detective and kind of uses service time as a firefighter to put him up there so he doesn't get laid off. And for people to go along with it was just unbelievable. There was never pushback until Saber and McCarty got elected, and that's when things started to unravel slowly. So
wild. All right. So listen, I won't keep you forever. In closing, do you, if someone came to you tomorrow and said, "Hey, I'm thinking about running for council," what would your one piece of advice be to that person? And it can't be, don't move to New Hampshire.
No. So to me, there's a couple of things. I know you said one. There's a couple.
Dude, as many as you want. Your show.
One, make sure your family's on board. Because the amount of time that it takes away from doing the things with your family, you don't realize. The timing was right for me. I had my two oldest were my oldest was in college. My middle boy was graduating that year, and my daughter was in her sophomore year. So we were getting to a point where I had more time to do it. Right. Ask yourself why. Right. Why do I want to do this? And really talk to people that aren't involved in the political world who have done this, and talk to them before you jump in. If I had done that, I got the first one. I got the second one. If I had talked to a couple of people, I probably would have been talked out of it. I guess I didn't realize the amount of bullshit you deal with on a daily basis when it comes to that. Everyone asked, what was your favorite thing to do as a counselor? My favorite thing was being able to fix the small things that somebody would call me about, right? Hey, the potholes, or, speed limit stuff, and being able to do traffic studies, right? That was the stuff I really enjoyed. But when you get candidates that are doing it for the other reasons, which is about what they're going to be able to do for their friends and not what you're doing for the, basically a lot of candidates do it for the few, not the many. And I can gladly say that I was the opposite of that. I didn't owe anybody anything. My campaign committee was all my friends. I didn't have anyone connected.
I still got my Joel Faretra for City Council shirt that's got our face on it.
Yes. I remember the night I gave out those shirts, Tom Lucia was at my fundraiser and, wrote a check for $100. Oh, we should really talk sometime. Joe Solomon's got a, bad rap. I'm like, that's all I needed to know from you. Goodbye. So I guess, and so, it's the family on board and you're doing it for the right reasons.
Yeah, I made that mistake the first one there when I ran for mayor. We didn't have that conversation thoroughly thoroughly enough, and I might have jumped the gun, and I'm lucky to be alive to this day. So
Well, not enough that you did it again.
well, no, the most recent 2 times were sanctioned,
Yeah.
but
And I think, and that
she
was,
would have been justified in killing me then. So
yeah. So, and it's just doing it for the rights, it's just really getting an idea of what it's going to entail, because it's not a position you go into and you could like just kind of half-ass it. I guess you could,
so many do.
right? But it's going to reflect on you in the end. And, like I said, unfortunately, life takes turns you don't expect. And, we end up moving quicker than we thought. So, a house falls into it and be like, all right, well, all right, let me get this stuff done. And then, crap hit the wall everywhere. And, things fell how they may, but for every post there is on social media about, what that, oh, he's trying to break it. There's dozens of texts I get from people that I've known forever and be like, don't pay any attention to the bullshit. We know the real story. And that's the part that I'm okay with. Social media is not real. It's, none of it is. And it's the people you've known before and that you got to know through this. And, you're one of them. You and I will throw shit back and forth at each other, but but in the end of the day, we can still laugh about it because that's what we're supposed to. But it's not like that, unfortunately, with a lot of that council. And like you can see it, I'm sure I haven't watched the meeting yet, but I get reports and people tell me, and I read the Substack, you know, so I read that stuff still because
I try so hard to keep those recaps unbiased.
no, and
So hard.
I think you do, if you do a recap and then a commentary, I think would be, you keep them separate. And I think that would be a good service, to like really, here's a neutral version. Here's the asshole Shabelia version, and read both and kind of think where you are. But there's really nobody pushing back on this council right now because the Tribune's a joke. It has been for years, and Duggan doesn't really report the news. He only reports what he wants to. He's not a journalist.
No,
like
he's a hired gun.
Right. How many stories have happened in Methuen that he didn't cover? Right. Like, the whole Solomon Gallant thing. He's out there trying to say the city's going to be proven wrong. And in every turn you get, he's been wrong on it. He's never done a free report. I don't remember any headlines on the fountain stuff. So, there's really nobody out there to be an independent voice. And those, I'm off the Methuen politics page, so I don't know what's on there. But, you got the Sid Harrises and the Evelyn Tobins and all that who, ran Jen Canan's campaign to the ground. So for them to come out there as the independent voices, they're not really. And, Sid's got family that works in the DPW. One was involved at the cemetery when all that money went missing. But, you don't want to mention that, but that never gets mentioned. So, but
all in all,
yeah,
my takeaway there is it is a thankless job, but being able to put up those small wins and make people's lives just a little bit better was worth it.
Oh, absolutely. Right. Like, my only regret really is how it ended. I would have loved to have been able to get those things crossed against the finish line and been in there December, the last meeting in December, and got my little plaque from DJ and been like, all right, yeah, great. But listen, life takes turns you don't expect, and you do what you got to do sometimes. And I did, a lot of things changed over those 5 years in the council. I left that job, the municipal job, and went in the private sector just because that was a hassle. Working and being on the council, like there were so many things I had to, I couldn't do business. Like if a constituent called me during the day and I was at work, I can't talk to you right now. Like you got to call me after 4:00.
Yep.
If I had to go, if there was an opening ceremony or something, I have to make sure I was off the clock, document that I wasn't on the clock during that. You know what I mean? Like there was so many headaches doing that. And, yeah. And I also wasn't getting the stipend. So but I knew all that going in.
Right.
I knew it, and I did it anyway. So, but also that created, I had friends before the election, and that really split some people because, I got elected, some of my friends didn't, and it really caused an issue there. And ultimately, I'm better off for it, to be honest. Like, I'm in a much better spot right now, um, physically, mentally. You know, the council did beat me up. I gained a lot of weight. I went on antidepressants. I wasn't sleeping. Um, and it really made me a miserable person. So, um, probably like going into that third term, things kind of, started going the other way. I went to a doctor, saw some, talked to some people, got some, was put on medication, and started losing some weight, and then went on the GLPs and cost you guys millions. But, you know, I stopped. The hardest thing at the beginning was blocking out the outside noise, right? You know it, where not paying attention to everything on social media, not listening to the, Gillises of the world and all those frauds who really, think they want to know everything. You think they know everything, but they don't. And just trying to stay the course on why you got there. And when you start listening to that noise and start making that affect your decisions, they've won. And that's what I feel like happens sometimes, whether people change or they put on a facade while they're getting elected. And then once they're in office, they change. That definitely, you can definitely see that. And I changed a little, but I feel like I changed for the positive for the most part, where I I had to learn on the fly. I had no idea what I was doing at the beginning, but no, I made it my job to learn what I was doing, and maybe my reactions to stuff didn't change much, but I knew what I was talking about. And that was the aggravating part, is what I felt like I know what I'm talking about, and I bring up facts, and then it's just widely ignored. And you have to learn to take that with a grain of salt too, where, you know, you're fighting for something and you're right, but ultimately not everyone's going to see it that way. So,
Well, that was both uplifting and a little depressing.
it is. It's, think of it. How many times do people do it at work too, right? Like, you go into a team meeting, you do your homework, you have the presentation ready to go, and I killed this. And then you get to the meeting, right? And yeah, my favorite saying was, if you know the facts, you pound the facts. If you know the numbers, you pound the numbers. Neither pound the table.
Yep.
And I served with a lot of table pounders, right? So, sometimes you put in the work and it doesn't work, but all you can do is then 6 months later just go back and watch the video. I tried to tell you. And so don't come yelling at me when this happens or that happens. Am I wrong sometimes? Yes. But for the most part, I felt like I was on the right side of my decisions. So.
Oh man. Well, for what it's worth, bud, it was a pleasure serving with you. So
No,
the time we spent together doing the audit.
Yeah. And I don't think people realized the amount of time yourself, Mary Beth, who absolutely love, and, DJ to a point where, he was kind of checked out because he had so many other things going on.
Yeah.
And,
Need to run.
Right. Where, the three of us really drove that audit and would throw stuff off of DJ when he could pay attention. How many times it'd be, Fridays for an hour in the afternoons, meet with the team and have to make changes to this or changes to that. And how many drafts of that final report did we have? And you have people go, why are you blacking out a name? Well, because if I just report to somebody that Dan Shabelia is an asshole and he touches kids, right? That doesn't mean it's fact that could be in a report somewhere. Like, if you're going to put stuff out there with people's names, it needs to be factual and be able to be backed up. You can't just release something that a parent wrote in about a teacher and then have that out there for everybody to see without it being redacted. There's no There's no evidence to back up any of that stuff, and people don't understand that. The one that aggravated me the most about that was Kristen Maxwell.
Oh, here we go. I
Right?
thought we were done, and now you're opening a can of worms.
Right? She's out there talking about why the report doesn't have names, and then she calls the city of Wilmington when Brady's applying for that job to badmouth her. She's a small business owner. Can you imagine if people started calling town roofing and doing that about stuff she was doing on the council? Right? She would lose her shit. And but it's amazing how quickly people don't realize that stuff. So she called after I was off the council. She texted me asking me if I'm going to do anything with the audit. I'm like, ask my fellow counselors. I'm like, they got rid of me. And she's like, write a letter or something. I'm like, the only 3 kids I care about now are my own. I'm like, well, the Methuen's depending on you. Well, you should have told that to the other 8 counselors. Then maybe you should have showed up on September 15th and said something in public participation, not the day, a couple of days before the joint meeting, and then asking me to do stuff. My job is done. So yeah. So I decided to go off on that tangent, but people got to realize that sometimes what you think is doing is right isn't. And yeah, you have a role as a school committee member, but stepping out of that, or city councilor, but when you step out of that role to do stuff like that, it's not right. Like, I did that. I may have wrote a whole email to the Woburn City Council about Robert Ferrulo. Probably wasn't one of my prouder moments now that I work in Woburn. They have to deal with the city offices all the time. Luckily, I don't think anyone has put 2 and 2 together, but sometimes what you think you're doing is right, probably not. So
everyone makes mistakes, man. That's how you deal with them afterwards, right?
Yeah, exactly. Larry Smith and I have, we had a huge falling out on that. And, he came at me on Twitter one day, or X, whatever you want to call it, quoting the same stuff that Jana did. I live in my mother-in-law's basement, this and that. I'm like, Larry, you lost a $500,000 contract because you lied. You don't carry pad tracks anymore. And, a lot of that, you did a good job putting all that information together, but it was also mostly handed to you by the people inside the department because they couldn't do that report, or it looks like that they had to hire somebody from the outside to put that report together. Methuen couldn't do that report, put it in, because they would look at it as it's biased. And so, but ultimately, whatever, bad things I have to say about Larry, he did get this across the finish line. He did put that report together, like the city needed him to. And it did help eventually, bring at least them to court, not justice. Like, let's face it, Karen Reed's been tried for murder twice before Joe Solomon's been on trial for this. So he was arrested before Karen Reed, and she served 2 trials since then, and probably will have a 3rd civil one before Joe shows up in a courtroom. And if you ask me right now to bet on if he ever shows up in a courtroom for this, I would bet no.
Yeah, I'd take that bet. 100%. He's never going to see the inside of a courtroom.
Yep. And that's Methuen in a nutshell for you, buddy. Like, that's why he did what he did for so long, because he felt like he was above the law and there weren't consequences. And this is kind of showing that now. And it starts with the current governor. Like, I'm sure I haven't read Larry's book, but when she was the AG, she had multiple opportunities. This information was brought to her, just ignored it. So, and then the whole thing with Ferrulo, who was the MPTC chair. She had opportunity to bring, what she do makes him exempt, and Dean pull both salaries. So it's disgusting when you start peeling back those layers of the onion.
All right. Well, we got there.
Before we wrap up, was there anything on your list that you didn't get to ask that I?
No, man, that was more than I could have planned for. But no, man, I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate you covering all that you did, the work that you did, and I look forward to sharing the front page of the Valley Patriot with you.
Thank you. Hey, listen, keep Methuen needs people to fight, whether I agree with how they're fighting for stuff or not, but
oh, dude, I'm going to fight until I drop. So
yeah, if you make enemies of certain people, you're doing something right. So I think where I stand on that. So
yeah, no, Kelsey and I are a lot of things, but quiet, shy, and worried about the consequences of the mob of Methuen
Yeah.
I don't think that's us.
But it's not even really the mob of Methuen. You know what I mean? Like that's the frustrating thing is so many of them aren't from Methuen. You don't really have a dog in the fight, but you're doing it. So, it's just, you know, his newspaper is bought and paid for by Methuen residents, so that he's going to do their bidding.
Yeah.
And if you don't like what's going on in that paper, look at election time. Who's buying ads in there?
Do you know how many times I've been told if you just write him a check, he'll leave you alone? I would rather eat the money in pennies than give that man a dime.
You know how many people I've talked to who have done ads or are tied to, and pretty much just tell me the same thing where they just deal with it because if they push back, they know what's going to happen because they've seen it happen to so many other people. And you know, but
Dude, I had people who were going to write letters for me and do some campaign stuff that didn't want to do it because they were worried about the attacks that would come out of
yeah,
that
exactly.
group. And
Yeah,
I mean, I get it and I don't hold it against them at all because there were a few of them. But like, that's why Methuen can't attract quality candidates. It's not because we don't have health insurance, like Pesh said. It's because they use hired guns to do their dirty work so they can keep their hands clean.
absolutely. And that whole thing. We use that argument with the raises, and you know it's kind of legit, but not really. But to me, the raise when that came up, well, the council just voted themselves a double their raise a couple of years ago. Yeah, but we eliminated the health insurance, which was the real cost.
Right. And especially in a self-funded.
Right. So you really have cost savings when you look at it because there were counselors that had health insurance, and Jana used that as leverage when this went through because then she wanted to pull the names of counselors over the last 6 years that had health insurance to use it against those who did get it. See, well, this person, especially if they're still involved in politics, well, this person still got it, this person got it, and now they're saying no. So that's the dirty stuff. But it's so self-serving with some of that, and don't miss it. Don't miss it. But it is what it is.
But
Yeah.
listen, man, if you've got friends, recruit good people for school committee, for city council. I mean, if we don't get at least a few good apples in there, it goes to hell in a handbasket real fast.
And I'm afraid that the waters have been poisoned. Like you had more school committee members running this year than I ever remember. You had 10.
9.
So, nine. 9 or was it 9? But you had actually more than
You
seats.
got a full docket. Yeah.
Yeah. But in the end of the day, do you have people I don't think people realize the amount of work, of what a campaign entails. I didn't at first, but if you really want to do it the right way, it takes a lot of time. You got to ask people for money, which sucks.
It's horrible.
But then it's just, I don't know. And the thing is just tough right now. Let's face it. It's a toxic environment, either one, school committee or city council. And, it's not going to get better unless the people that are on those seats decide to do it. And I don't think the groups that are in there now are going to. You have restraining orders against people, against members against each other. So
yeah, I have lots of opinions on that, but they've got a hearing coming up soon, so I'm gonna wait till after the hearing to share my opinions.
Yeah, I'm gonna wait. I don't have a lot of opinions besides that. It's just if two grown adults are going to do that, there's got to be something behind it for that to.
Oh, 100%. It was totally meant to distract from the DUI.
Yeah. So deflect and accuse. So.
Yep.
All right, sir. Well, I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to talk to.
Hey, listen, but anytime you want to come back, shoot me a text.
Yeah. No, I'm just, I think, unfortunately, the way everything ended with me on the council, I really didn't get to explain why and how everything went down. And I feel like I did a good enough job tonight explaining that. It doesn't matter to a lot of people, but it happened the way it did. I did what I needed to do. I did what I needed to do, and I felt like staying on those council for just a couple more weeks to get the business finished that I started was worth it. Unfortunately, the colleagues that I was with did not. So ultimately,
the people who care will listen, they'll care, and the people who don't,
Yeah,
They're going to say what they want to say anyways.
exactly. So, all right, sir. Well, have a good night. Keep up the good work. To the 33 people. Holy, I can't believe that.
So listen, last time we did this, it hovered around 20 to 40 during the stream. But once this thing hits YouTube and Spotify, I mean, it was close to 1,000 on the last one. And
I just want to thank those people. I see the chat, people chatting and all that. I appreciate you guys taking 90 minutes out of your Tuesday night to watch this live. And, I appreciate you guys. And, I just try to do what was right. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, and this, it worked for a few years. It just didn't work at the end. So unfortunately, I'm stuck in Methuen until I can get rid of that house.
Or you could come back and run for mayor when DJ's done.
No, I'm good with that. But anyone know a realtor in case I need one in Methuen? I don't know. Is there any around?
A couple on the council. Call me. I'll get you a good referral.
There you go. All right.
All right, bud. It's been a pleasure. Inside Methuen will be back in 2 weeks. Let me know who we should do. Who do you think we should do next?
So who have you done?
You, Larry, and DJ thus far.
Is this all political, or do you want?
No, it could be anything.
My recommendation, if you're going to do this in 2 weeks, reach out to Tom Ryan. Reach out to the athletic director. It's going to be his downtime. There's a lot of good stuff going on there. Maybe it's a little more of a happier. I would, maybe you go that route. Maybe you go, he's a great guy. He's taken over from Matt. That program, those programs have done great things over there. I would maybe go that route. Maybe go to Tom, see if he's be willing to do it, publish her out that way. But I don't know, that maybe you put a poll out on your Inside Methuen page of, what would you like us to cover next? And, see if you can get some that way, maybe it's a couple of restaurants that you have a couple of the new owners. You got a couple of
oh man, that beef three-way that I had it.
Did you have the one
Borelli's the other night? Oh man, it was phenomenal.
I saw that
phenomenal
roast beef on Fridays, and it definitely did pique my interest. Because now I'm in Woburn, and I've got Pete's down there, and there's a new place, Mad Matt's, that just opened up right across.
I saw that on What Did You Eat Today, Sir?
Yeah, that they're really good too. And I love the food. So, but yeah, maybe there's a couple ways you go. I think a nice lighthearted couple of owners of new restaurants in town, or you go to the school route and do like an uplifting thing with Tom Ryan or something like that.
Yeah, I definitely need something uplifting after this.
Yeah, and if you ever need a co-host or you need to step out for a night, you got my number. I'm used to
doing it. Man, then we can rate it how many beards. All right, bud. Listen, we could do this all night long, but it's been fun. I appreciate it. Thank you to everybody who came in, popped in, checked it out, and is going to watch this. Send some comments. I don't know. I'm supposed to say what, like, share, comment, follow, whatever it is. Do all the things, and we'll talk to you later.
All right. Have a great night, everyone. Thank you.
Good night.